Hello everyone, it's your host, SethTheProgrammer, and with me today I have my good old pal, Swag Kage, and
hello again everybody.
And we are going to be talking about Rock Lee versus Sasuke from the Chunin exam. So, this is actually a pretty popular topic, but I've never done it, so I don't know. I was just like, why not? Let's go, you know? So, before we get into that, though, we do have a... I said, dough. Today, I'd like to proudly thank Genshin Impact for sponsoring this video, as without them, content like this wouldn't be possible. It's an absolute pleasure to have them on this video, and they're directly supporting my channel. Genshin Impact has released their brand new 2.0 update, the Immovable God and the Eternal Euthymia, which adds a lot of new content to the game, so even if you're already familiar with Genshin Impact, just wait, because there's so much more content than before. The 2.0 update adds an area to the game called Inazuma, which looks absolutely amazing, and there's a whole new storyline to uncover there. So again, if you're an experienced player, there's loads of new stuff they've added. They are also releasing some awesome new characters: Yoimiya, a powerful 5-star pyro bow hunter, and Sayu, who is a 4-star tiny little ninja that's very deadly, and that's not even scratching the surface of the new content added. If you're not familiar with Genshin Impact, let me fill you in. In this game, you're trying to seek for your missing sibling by traveling on the continent and discovering its secret. You go around and collect different characters to build up your team. You can switch between the different characters, and they all have different elements that you can control. You can use these elements to affect the world around you, like burning down trees, freezing water, or use them in combos in conjunction with each other to do huge damage to bosses or bonuses on people in these amazingly detailed open world areas. On top of this, the game contains amazing anime-like graphics, awesome combat, clean animations, in-depth quests, and many fun puzzles. Sponsorship aside, this is true for a free-to-play game. It is very good, and I do actually recommend it. So part of the genius about this game is to structure your team to be as deadly as possible and ready for every situation. Honestly, I'm super proud to have Genshin Impact as a sponsor for today's video, and without them, content like this seriously would not be possible. Go check out Genshin Impact in the description below, download the game, and enjoy. Once more, it's linked below.
All right, so this is a little bit, I guess interesting is like a fine catch-all term to use here. Yeah, so this is a little bit interesting because Sasuke and Lee, they can't really fight at any point throughout the Chunin exams without it being a total stomp. So we should clarify that this is gonna be like special, special rules type deal, because in the preliminaries, Sasuke was fatigued, basically about to collapse, couldn't use any ninjutsu or anything because of the effects of the curse mark, and in the Chunin exam finals, Lee was crippled. So in either situation, really, and plus, pre-training Sasuke probably wouldn't, like, even if you get rid of the exhaustion, probably wouldn't be able to stand up to Lee anyway. So, we are going to be saying that, assume that Lee beat Gaara and made it to the finals of the Chunin exams, and Sasuke is fighting Lee in Gaara's place.
And assume Lee didn't break all his muscles and bones, like kicking with the gates or something,
Yeah. So, this isn't going to surprise too many people. Me, personally, I'm backing Sasuke, though I do think that there are some legit ways that you can claim that Lee wins. Like, if you don't think that Sasuke has the durability to take the hidden lotus beatdown,
the ping pong attack,
Lee, yeah,
looks like a Dragon Ball
Lee
barrage,
jumping off of all of the walls, and granted, this would be significantly more difficult in the Chunin exam finals arena because the walls are spread out a lot more, and Lee wouldn't be able to jump off the ceiling. So maybe he wouldn't, but I'm sure he'd figure something out, so that's kind of irrelevant. But if you don't think Sasuke could survive something like that, followed by a hidden lotus, then yeah, Lee probably does win, because it's established that at this point, Sasuke's speed is pretty close to, if not the same as, weightless Lee's. If you want, you can probably assume, since it's Lee's speed, it's Lee's own speed, he achieved it himself or whatever,
right,
that he's a little bit faster than Sasuke. You could also argue that since Sasuke copied it at an earlier point and then continued to train, he might be a little bit faster. The point is, the difference is probably marginal, and it could go either way, so I don't think that affects too much. So we can probably just assume that they're even.
Here's one thing, at least with the speed, is that regardless of Sasuke kind of reaching that speed level, he has like a stamina problem using that speed or something.
Yeah.
So he even if he is relative, it would, if they were just to have a race or something, you know, down the track, Lee would probably win over time. So
yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
And the other thing too is that Sasuke can't open the gates, which Lee can.
Yeah.
And I don't think anybody needs us to tell them the gates are a massive physical amp. Obviously, Lee gets way faster each time he opens a new one. By the time he opens the fourth, like he did against Gaara, there'd be no way for Sasuke to keep up. So it's kind of just a question of, do you think A, Lee would do it against Sasuke before losing, and B, do you think Sasuke could survive all those hits? The issue that Lee runs into is Sasuke fought a much more powerful version of Gaara and kind of performed like similarly to Lee. Like, Lee's performance against base Gaara was pretty impressive, and you know, he was knocking him around and stuff, but he didn't actually damage Gaara. He was just breaking off the sand armor, but Gaara himself wasn't really injured like at all. Whereas Sasuke just tore straight through Gaara's little like nuclear bunker that he made out of sand.
Right.
And that's implied to be like his ultimate shield, and made Gaara start bleeding. So he was definitely like above base Gaara, and it was only when Gaara went into his like Shukaku form that Sasuke started struggling, and even then he was able to damage Gaara, which, you know, if you assume that Shukaku mode Gaara is any stronger than base Gaara is, Lee wouldn't be able to do something like that. So Sasuke's AP should be higher than Lee's, which should mean that like if he hits Lee with Chidori, for example, Lee's going to just like collapse on the spot.
Which I assume most people would think anyway, but yeah.
Yeah. I again, that's another thing I don't think anybody needs us to tell them. So I guess the fight comes down to, do you think Sasuke would hit Lee with Chidori before Lee opens the gates and hits him? But that's only if you think that fourth gate Lee would beat Sasuke.
Right.
So what do you think?
So, keeping this still on a more grounded, rational level before we get really edgy and, you know, power scale-y. Just on a rational level, I just want you to just imagine how the fights went in both of these scenes. So, you have Rock Lee fight Gaara without his weight. He's pummeling him, he's beating him up, and then, you know, Gaara's getting flung around, his shield can barely keep up with him, he can't keep up with Lee's movement with his eyes, but his shield barely is behind him, his automatic shield. And then Sasuke is kind of doing the same thing, you know, similar level of speed, give or take, right? He's having like mirages of Lee as he's punching Gaara around. But something that's different about Sasuke than Lee is that Sasuke seems to punch harder than Lee, which is something a lot of people don't talk about, because when Sasuke starts landing these combos, Gaara starts to not really be able to get up, and there's one scene where he's just sitting on the ground huffing and puffing and he can't even move. And then I just want you to watch the Rock Lee fight, and when did Rock Lee ever do that? And then you would just say to yourself, well, you know, maybe Gaara's having a mental breakdown, and this is where we kind of get into, you know, the data books and all this whatever. But if you, in the data books, it does kind of explain the scene a little bit more, and it says Gaara, faced with his strongest opponent, wanted to be possessed by Shukaku because he felt like he couldn't do anything to Sasuke. And that's what the orb was. So he hides away in his orb, and then Sasuke just rips through it. Well, you know, his ultimate defense maneuver just rips through it. And it's crazy because it wasn't Sharingan, Curse Mark, or Chidori that put Gaara in that mindset of just almost fear. It was
a punch.
It was just Sasuke just bullying him with punches and kicks. So my headcanon was always, so while Sasuke's physical speed reached Lee's, perhaps, you know, Sasuke's chakra control or something maybe just allowed him to hit harder or something of the sort, and that's why he's able to output more damage, because And all of these data books or whatever you read, they're like, yeah, Sasuke's the strongest opponent Gaara's ever fought. There's even this new animation guide that says the confrontation between the best of the sand and leaves begin when Sasuke appears in the ring after training with Kakashi. He's about to fight Gaara, but that's never stated for Neji. It's never stated for Fifth Gate Lee or anything. So getting real edgy, it's like, you might be able to argue Sasuke's punching harder than Fifth Gate Lee. He's just not as fast or something. But that's really, really just edgy. I don't expect people to really believe it. Like maybe if you're a debater, you probably are more open to that. But normal people, I don't expect to. But I will open something up like this for normal people as well. Something I want to open up is, if you remember the scene with Gaara that actually allowed him to kind of survive the fifth gate, you know, kind of hurting him too badly. Like, it was, Rock Lee had like a moment where he got a shot of pain up his arm, and then Gaara made a sand clone or something, and Guy didn't see it because he was praying. And I just want you to imagine if base Gaara can do all of that with just Rock Lee having just a moment snap of pain. Would it be possible to argue that maybe the Sharingan, which can maybe just see a few actions into the future, might also be able to increase his reaction speed to the point where he might be able to perceive that enough to do something about it? Because base Gaara is significantly slower than Sasuke to begin with, and then you give Sasuke kind of precog almost, and
that's so I actually just looked at the Sasuke Gaara fight again. And for some reason, I was under the impression that Sasuke started the fight with the Sharingan. But yeah, he actually puts the schmack down on Gaara with no Sharingan active or anything. He's avoiding the sand with no precog. And yeah, if you give him a Sharingan amp on top of that,
exactly,
I think it is pretty fair to argue. Now, you could argue both ways about this. Again, if you're not like super edgy debater scaler man, but it would be fair to argue one way or another that with the Sharingan, Sasuke might actually be able to react and react to and avoid fourth gate Lee, at least maybe like third gate. I don't know, because like the physical buffs provided by each of the gates, especially at this point, aren't thoroughly explained. It's just like, third is stronger than second.
Exactly.
Fourth is stronger than third. Fifth is stronger than that. So it's kind of like an unquantifiable increase in strength and speed and so on. But what I will say is that Gaara's sand was still sort of relative to Lee's speed when he took off his weights before he before he opened the gates. And Sasuke's just like dodging all of it, like point blank running up to the sand barrier, avoiding all of these spikes coming out of it. He does get cut a little bit, but like, you know, and then when he activates his Sharingan, obviously he doesn't get hit by any of them. So I don't know, there may actually be an argument for Sasuke in here,
right,
after all. In terms of speed, but not in terms of physical movement speed, obviously, because again, based on statements, pretty clear cut that Lee is faster, but the Sharingan might give him the reaction speed necessary to avoid any potentially lethal blows.
Yeah, and that's what I was thinking as well. So I don't know, and maybe we can just pull a narrative argument here, because that's what I think these data books are actually saying, is more of a narrative argument that you know, they're almost looking at it just generic shonen, you know, escalation almost, you know, maybe not so much from the average fan who sees everyone as like a squishy ninja who gets like cut and everything, you know. So they're like, okay, so Lee fought, you know, base Gaara, who gave him a great fight after powering up, and now Sasuke is kind of the avenger of Lee, and he kind of beats up that same Gaara. And then he has to fight a stronger Gaara, and that's when Sasuke starts using his fail-safes. So that's why Sasuke is the strongest opponent of Gaara, right? Because he's the one who pushes Gaara the furthest and makes him fear him the most, even though 5th Gate and 4th Gate were going all out to the point that Lee's body was just absolutely failing against, you know, Gaara. So that's what I think the story is trying to present, and all of these data books and, you know, the story itself really shows it. But I don't blame people. Like, when you watch Lee fight Gaara and he's teleporting around like a Dragon Ball character, Like, when does Sasuke ever do that? Like, ever? Like, when does he ever he's teleporting around like if you were to put like Vegito in like this tournament, like that's what you would imagine. Like he would just start disappearing
exactly.
and ping-ponging people. So I really don't blame people for thinking that Lee looks way more impressive, and I definitely agree. And I would just go out on a limb and say that Kishimoto kind of just failed portraying that Sasuke should be stronger, and didn't seem to realize that he needed to show equally as impressive, you know, like physical shock waves or whatever as well, you know.
What I will say is I also think that this is an issue exacerbated by the anime's presentation of Lee versus Gaara, because Lee is still teleporting around and stuff and moving at an extremely high speed in the manga, but I don't think it's as, like, exaggerated. And Sasuke's movements are, like there's just kind of, like, speed lines at a lot of points throughout the Gaara fight to illustrate that it's basically impossible for anybody to follow him. So, I agree with what you're saying, to an extent, and I think that it's definitely, like the issue becomes a lot worse, too, when you consider that most people remember that Gaara-Lee fight and the Sasuke-Gaara fight from the anime, not from the manga, where it's a little bit different.
Exactly. Well, regardless of that, I do think that's pretty much everything we needed to say.
Yep.
Sasuke should take it, just narratively, just edgily, just really almost any way you put it. But if you do think Rock Lee just goes Dragon Ball teleportation mode and Sasuke is kind of a squishy ninja man and gets pummeled down, then yeah, Lee would take it. But anyways, thank you so much, Swag, for joining me. And I hope you guys enjoyed the video. Be sure to subscribe to Swag down below. And till next time.
Bye.